What if I told you your Toronto down payment could buy you an entire house outright somewhere else in Canada? And I'm not talking about moving to the middle of nowhere. Well, maybe for some I might be, but I am talking about a city with jobs, culture, and a quality of life that might actually be better. Today, I'm breaking down the math that's causing thousands of Canadians to make a move that might sound crazy until you see these numbers. And here's what nobody's talking about. This might be the last chance to capitalize on this gap before everyone else figures this out. Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name is Brioux and I'm a realtor in Moncton, New Brunswick. Every week I make videos about the Canadian real estate market to help you buy, sell, and invest. And if at any point you want to dive deeper into the Moncton market, you can head down to the first link in the description and book a call with me. Let's jump right in. Now, I need to be upfront with you. I live in Moncton. I work in Moncton. So yes, I have skin in the game. But I did move here from Southern Ontario for the reasons that I'm about to outline. But I'm not here to sell you some sort of fantasy. I'm going to show you some real numbers, real comparisons, and some real stories because here's the thing, this video is not for everybody. If you are deeply rooted in Toronto, for example, you love the big city, the energy, and money isn't an object, you should probably stop watching right now. But if you are one of the thousands of Canadians feeling priced out and exhausted by the grind and wondering if there's a better way, this might change everything if you continue watching. Something massive is happening in Canada right now, and the mainstream media is just starting to catch on. Between 2020 and 2024, Atlantic Canada saw the highest interprovincial migration rates in decades. We're not talking about retirees either. These are young professionals, families with kids, and even tech workers who realize their Toronto salary can make them work from anywhere. Moncton specifically grew by nearly 6% in population between 2021 and 2023. That's almost double the national average. Now here's where things get wild. This isn't happening because Atlantic Canada got cheaper. It's actually happening because Toronto and Vancouver and other major markets became completely unsustainable for the average Canadian family. The pandemic gave people permission to question everything that they thought they knew about where they had to live. And once you run the numbers, which we're about to do, the questions stop being, should I move? And they actually start being, why am I still here? All right, let's get into the numbers. And I want you to really absorb this because it's going to sound unbelievable to some of you. The average detached home in the GTA as of earlier this year was in around $1 million. And the median home price in Greater Moncton, well, you're looking at somewhere in around $350,000. That's an $800,000 gap between the two markets. Now, let me show you what that actually means in real terms. Let's say you have $200,000 for a down payment. Maybe you've been saving for a few years and maybe you sold a condo and have some equity to move up. In Toronto, that $200,000 would get you into a property in around $1 million, but you're still looking at an $850,000 or so mortgage, and you've got to add up your property tax and other fees that could be associated. The current rates, for example, let's say 5%, that's about $5,100 per month just for your mortgage payment. And then added things like property taxes and other fees and costs that you need to live, you are looking at well over $6,000 a month. And we're not even talking about some of the other niceties if you do need to have parking or a car. Now, jumping over to Moncton, that same $200,000 down payment, you could buy a $450,000 house with a lot of money to spare. Your monthly mortgage payment, well, that would be somewhere around $1,500. And yes, property taxes in many Moncton areas, well, you're looking at about $4,000 annually. That's roughly $300 to $400 per month. So your total monthly housing costs, you're looking at around $2,500 to $3,000 all in every month. That is $3,500 to $4,000 per month savings compared to Toronto. Over 5 years, that's $210,000 plus that you're not spending on housing. Now, let me show you what that money could actually buy you in the Moncton market today. For $500,000 in Toronto, you might get a 2-bedroom condo in a decent neighborhood, maybe 800 square feet or so. And condo fees, well, that will range. But for example, let's say you're looking at about $500 to $700 per month that includes everything inside that condo. For that same $500,000 in Moncton, you're looking at a 3 to 4 bedroom detached home in a great neighborhood. We're talking 1,800 or so square feet, a fenced-in yard, a garage. It's move-in ready. All right, so let's look at a slightly higher budget in Toronto. You might get into a townhouse for in around $700,000. It might be in the outer suburbs, but you're still looking at a commute if you are working downtown. In Moncton, $700,000 does get you a pretty spectacular property. And we're talking about a 2,500 square foot place, 4 bedrooms, finished basement, double garage, maybe even a pool, or some acreage. Imagine that. And here is the kicker. Your commute to work, potentially 0 if you're working from home, or 10 to 20 minutes tops if you are in the Moncton, Riverview, or Dieppe area. I know that some of you are thinking, sure, but what about Toronto's appreciation potential? I get it. There was some massive appreciation in the last couple of years, and it is a fair question. So let's talk about it for a second. Yes, Toronto real estate has historically appreciated very well, but these price points, you need significant appreciation just to break even on your carrying cost. Meanwhile, Moncton has seen about 5 to 7% annually over the last few years. And from a much lower base, this means that your percentage gains can compound even faster. Plus, and this is crucial, you're saving so much monthly that you could invest the difference in some sort of other investment. Now, let's talk about the income side of this equation, because this is where things could get really interesting. In Moncton, to afford that $450,000 home comfortably, you're looking at a household income of around $130,000. Now, I can already hear the response. Yeah, but Cameron, Toronto's salaries are higher. I agree. It's true in most cases, but I will break it down. And if you want to use the calculator that you just saw on screen, you can click it down in the description and play around with some affordability numbers on your own and get an idea. So according to Stats Canada, the median household income in Toronto is about $87,000. In Moncton, it's actually around $72,000. That's only about a $15,000 gap. But remember, your housing costs in Moncton could be about $40,000 to $50,000 less per year when looking at the examples that we just went over. So even with a lower salary, you are about $20,000 ahead of the game annually. And that's before we factor in other things like cost of living differences. Groceries in Moncton do run about 10 to 15% higher for some products than others. And car insurance, depending on your provider and the type of vehicle you have, you could see significant savings. And gas, well, it seems to be all over the map, but you are driving significantly less if you are comparing your commute in the GTA. Childcare costs can range, but overall, you could be looking at a savings about 15 to 25% versus Toronto. So when you add it all up, and if you are making a lower salary in Moncton versus Toronto, you are actually further ahead in the long run. But here's where things could get better: remote work. If you can keep your Toronto salary and work remotely from Moncton, you've essentially given yourself a massive raise without changing jobs. And I have worked with many clients who have done exactly that. We do have an international airport, and if they are required to travel, there are generally cheap flights to airports like Porter where they can get to their head office if they're required. So they kept their $100,000 plus job in Toronto, and they telecommuted and physically commuted when they needed to. Now, not everybody can work remotely, and I totally get that. So what's the job market actually like in Moncton? Moncton is actually the fastest growing census metropolitan area east of Toronto. We do have a tech sector here in Atlantic Canada, and there are many regional offices, with a few in the Moncton area. Healthcare, well, they're always hiring. We do have 2 major hospital networks within the province and 2 hospitals in Moncton. Manufacturing and logistics and call centers, Well, there are many opportunities. In education, we do have a few community college as well as two universities. So there are definitely opportunities across various sectors. Is this Toronto's job market? No. Toronto is one of the largest cities in North America, but for most people, the trade-off makes sense. Slightly fewer job options in exchange for dramatically better affordability and quality of life. Let's talk about safety. You might have Googled it. Moncton's crime rate is lower than Toronto across all the categories. But you can let your kids play in the yard without constant supervision, but I recommend keeping an eye. You can walk at night and not be worried. And again, Toronto, it is great, but I know that it can feel dangerous at certain times in certain parts of the city. Moncton definitely has a different community feeling. It does feel more connected. And speaking of community, you actually get to know your neighbors in Moncton. In Toronto, you might live in the same building as someone for years and never actually have a conversation with them. Here, people actually say hi. They shovel each other's driveways in the winter. They let you borrow a cup of sugar. And guess what? They care about the neighborhood. Now, let's address the elephant in the room, healthcare. Yes, New Brunswick, like most places in Canada, does have challenges with access to healthcare, and finding a family doctor can be a challenge. But here's what most people don't realize. Toronto healthcare system, it's also strained. The wait times can be long, and getting into a specialist can be difficult. In Moncton, you're not paying $7,000 per month in housing while you wait. I didn't really have a silver lining to this because I know it is challenging, but I guess if you're not paying $7,000 in housing, it might be worth the wait. Or you might have some extra money if you did need to travel to see a specialist. And Moncton is actively recruiting for healthcare professionals, and I would say it's actually improving and not declining. Education-wise, New Brunswick has excellent schools. And guess what? They follow the same curriculum across Canada. In some neighborhoods, class sizes tend to be smaller than major urban centers, and teachers often have more individual time for attention, and your kids can actually be kids. Now, let's talk about this purely from an investment standpoint, because whether you plan to live here or not, you need to understand the financial fundamentals. Over the past 10 years, Toronto real estate has appreciated by about 60 to 70%, depending on the area. And that does sound amazing until you realize that it's actually an average of 6 to 7% annually, and prices started from a much higher base. Moncton real estate has appreciated by approximately 50 to 60% over that same period, but from a much lower starting point, meaning better percentage returns on initial investment. But here's where things get really interesting when you look at the trajectory. Moncton's growth is accelerating while Toronto seems to be moderating. Why? Well, supply and demand fundamentals. Moncton is adding housing supply, and demand is growing faster for some housing types with interprovincial migration and migration in general. Toronto has constrained supply and demand and is increasingly coming from investors rather than end users, which can create volatility. From a rental investment perspective, Moncton can offer better cash flow opportunities depending on the area and property type. A $400,000 property in Moncton might rent for $2,000 per month. Your mortgage, taxes, and insurance and maintenance might cost you $2,200 to $2,400 per month. And know that the property tax for non-owner occupied in New Brunswick is at a higher rate. So you are closer to break even, and in some cases you could be slightly negative, but you are building equity and you have tenants covering almost all of the costs. In Toronto, a $1 million property might rent for $3,500 to $4,000 per month, but your monthly cost could easily be about $5,000 per month. That is significant when you're looking at the overall shortfall in the long run. So which investment could make more sense from a cash flow perspective? You tell me. I am not saying that Toronto real estate is a bad investment. It has proven to be resilient over the decades. At these higher price points, your return on investment timeline extends significantly, and you need substantial capital to even enter that market. Moncton offers a low barrier to entry, potentially better cash flow, and you're betting on continued growth in one of Canada's fastest growing regions. Plus, and this matters, your personal stress is way lower when you're not house poor. Okay, so let's say that you're seriously considering this. What does this transition actually look like? First, you need to validate the remote work situation if that applies to you. Have a conversation with your employer. Many companies appear to be more flexible than you think, especially post-pandemic. And if you need to find a job in Moncton, you can start networking before you move. LinkedIn could be your best friend. Reach out to the recruiters, join local professional groups, get active in online communities, especially for your industry. Second, visit before you commit. And I cannot stress this enough. Come spend a week here, not as a tourist. Actually live here. And go to the grocery store. Drive around during rush hour. See how it feels. Check the neighborhoods, walk around, talk to the locals. You want to ask about winters. And yes, if you haven't been here, in the wintertime, it is a little bit unique. When I moved here, and you see this in a few videos, they actually put large stakes at the end of the road for snow removal companies. I didn't know what they were for. One winter, I found out very quickly. Snow can accumulate very quick here. Snow removal companies can take it away very quickly, but it does get bad when it gets bad. And that could be a little bit of a change. If you have kids, visit the schools. Try to meet with the principal if that's possible. Third, understand the real estate market here before you buy. Consuming videos and content from professionals like myself could be a really good way to understand the flavor before you make a deep commitment. So yes, this was a shameless plug to work with a realtor like me that could help guide you through the market and show you what a proven path to success could look like as you make your decision. And if you saw my last month's stat update video, you know that there are hotter areas and sectors within Moncton that could give you a better return and potentially be more well suited for your lifestyle. So please don't just buy the first thing that you see because it's affordable. You need to be strategic. Fourth, plan your finances carefully. And this is not financial advice, it's just common sense. If you're selling in Toronto to buy in Moncton, your timing matters. You don't want to be stuck in short-term housing because your closings don't align. So if you are working with a mortgage broker, consider bridge financing. And you want to budget for your moving costs because they can add up. Fifth, and it might sound silly, you want to prepare emotionally and socially. You are leaving friends, families, and familiar routines. That is super hard, and it's okay to acknowledge that. You want to build a support system before you arrive. You'll join leagues and hobby groups and even volunteer so that you can get connected. The Moncton community is very welcoming, but you do need to put yourself out there. Complaining on Facebook is not the best way to meet people. Get out there, join something, go for a coffee, talk to somebody in line. All right, this is a bit of a story time and I will protect the names for privacy. So number one is a young family. We will call them Mark and Sarah. They moved from the GTA with their two young kids in 2022. Mark actually did have a tech job and he negotiated full work, and Sarah was a teacher, and guess what? She found a position here in Greater Moncton. They sold their $850,000 home in the GTA and bought a $475,000 detached home in Moncton North with 4 bedrooms and a finished basement. And Mark told me this first month, I kept waiting for the other shoe to drop. Like, how is this real? How do we have this much space, this much money left over? 2 years later, they banked over $80,000 that they would have been spending on housing in the GTA. They're actually saving for their kids' education now. Their biggest challenge, yes, was missing Toronto's food scene and some of their extended family, which they do actually get to visit a couple of times a year. Was it worth it? Mark said, absolutely. Story number 2 is my new pal, Jessica. She moved here solo in 2023 from the GTA. And she was working in a corporate job. She took a significant pay cut to work for a local firm because she wanted to experience something different in life. Though she was renting, her housing costs shifted by about $2,800 per month. So the net result was she was actually ahead significantly financially, and she had more breathing room than she had for the first time in years. So it's interesting, she took a pay cut, got the chance to experience a different and better quality of life, and felt some breathing room. She did say that she thought she'd move here for a few years and go back, but I checked in with her recently and she said, I might never leave. Her challenge was building a social circle from scratch in her 30s, but she joined a running club and a book club. It took about 6 months for her to feel settled in, but she did it and she does not regret it. Okay, I do have quite a few stories of folks that have moved from Ontario and further places out west for retirement. The family house was too big, not what they wanted. They wanted to be able to have flexibility and travel. And guess what? I have helped many families do just that, move from one place to another to be able to enjoy retirement. Something common in all of these stories is that it took all of these folks time to stop feeling like they needed to be rushing somewhere. Now they feel settled and they love it. These stories are of real people, the outcomes are possible, but they all require intentionality and planning. So, is this move right for you? Let me give you the framework so you can think about it. Ask yourself, what am I optimizing for? If your answer is career advancement in a specific field that only exists in major metros, let's say film production or high finance or certain tech specialties, the larger city is probably the one that you should stay in. If your answer is wealth building, quality time with family, lower stress, long-term financial security, well, guess what? Moncton might be the play. Ask yourself, can I maintain my income if I move? Remote work does match this, and it makes sense for a lot of people. Without it, you do need secure employment, and Moncton does have a lot of good opportunities. Ask yourself, what do I actually value about where I live now? If it's the diversity, the culture, the endless restaurant options, the anonymity of a big city, those are real things, and Moncton probably won't be able to fully replicate them. If what you value is community, nature access, manageable costs of living, and time with loved ones, Moncton delivers those in spades. Ask yourself, what's my 5-year plan? If you're planning to have kids or already have young kids, Moncton offers unbeatable childhood environments. If you're single and in your 20s, you might want the big city experience first. That's valid. I totally get that. If you're nearing retirement, the financial flexibility of moving to Moncton could completely change your retirement quality. Ask yourself, what's my risk tolerance? Moving is a big deal. It is disruptive. It is uncomfortable. But so is spending the next 20 years house poor and stressed and disconnected from what actually matters to you. There is risk in moving. There is also risk in staying. Finally, ask yourself, if I don't do this, will I regret it? That's the question that matters the most. 5 years from now, if you're still in that big city, struggling with the same issues, you will wish that you'd taken the leap. Or will you be glad that you stayed because Toronto is genuinely the right place for you? There's no wrong answer, but there is an honest answer. Look, I know that this video might sound like a sales pitch, and in a way it is. I am a realtor in Moncton, and I am somebody who moved from the GTA to have a better quality of life. So obviously, I believe in this place, but I also genuinely believe that for a lot of Canadians, the math just doesn't work anymore in the major metros. You can do everything right, get a good education, work hard, save diligently, and find yourself priced out of reasonable quality of life. That is not a personal failure. That's a market reality. And when the market fundamentals change, the smart move is to adapt. Moncton is not perfect, but no place is. We do have challenges, healthcare access, fewer options in certain fields, winter weather, and yes, we are a smaller city with fewer amenities than Toronto, but for many people, especially families, remote workers, and those prioritizing financial stability, those trade-offs are absolutely worth it. The people I've worked with who have made the move, vast majority tell me that this is one of the best decisions they ever made. Not because Moncton is a paradise, but because it gave them their quality of life back. Time with their families, financial breathing room, a sense of community, the ability to actually build wealth instead of just treading water. If this resonates with you, I encourage you to dive a little bit deeper. Visit Moncton, run your numbers, talk to people who have made the move to Moncton. And if you want to talk through your specific situation seriously, you can book a discovery call with me by clicking the link down in the description. I promise I will not pressure you. This move isn't right for everyone, and I tell you if I don't think that it makes sense for your situation. But I will give you real information, honest insights, and help you think through what could actually be the best for your real estate move. If you found this video helpful, please hit that like button. It genuinely helps more people find this content. and subscribe to watch more videos about the Canadian real estate market, where I provide some strategies, some tips, and drop a comment down below if you are considering to make a move like this. Let me know what is holding you back. I do read every comment and I will respond. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, I will see you in the next video.